You're listening to Neuma, the Crossroad of Science and Enlightenment. This podcast is a place where science meets soul and healing meets hope, where the latest in science meets ancient wisdom to illuminate the path toward healing and transformation. We break through stigma and misinformation to explore the transformative power of psychedelic therapy, holistic health, and the mind-body connection. Through stories, insight, and expert conversations, we provide practical solutions to help you reclaim your mental health, embrace your spirituality, and achieve true enlightenment. Hosted by Alan Wiederhold, author of the book Walking in the Garden, Discovering God Through Psychedelics. Alan is the consummate explorer, passionate about empowering others to embrace the divinity of their true selves, as well as the founder of Neuma Health, whose mission is to restore and transform lives. Here's your host, Alan Wiederhold.
Hey everyone, this is Alan Wiederhold. This is Neuma. I have with me today Chelsey Turpening Coxsey, correct?
Turpening
Coxsey. So this is actually a really funny story. We met 6 months ago, I think it was, somewhere right around there, and we met through Facebook of all crazy random places. I think it was like a CEO company mastermind thing. You had posed a question, I had answered. I looked at a lot of the questions that were there, and I'm like, man, how many of these people actually ran a business? We got to talking, and then you and I actually had a conversation. We're in Australia, correct?
Yes.
So I want you to introduce yourself, and I'm so excited about this one because we've both had a lot of change in this last year, and I'm so excited to be able to kind of talk about that on this show. So, Chelsey, introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you, and then we'll get into the weeds of all the other.
Yes. I'm happy to be here today. So my name is Chelsey Turpening Coxsey. I work with dreams and a self-discovery, self-development way. That's where I originally started. So it has evolved to today where it's more like innovative psychology. And I've been exploring working with astronauts and analog astronauts and engineers to develop how to interact and co-create with their subconscious mind and to use that to bring into the work for developing for the equipment we're using to go to space, the mindset, and to be spiritually connected to this feeling of God or the universe, especially when you're out there exploring out by yourself. You kind of need a little connection. So a lot of it is in that area. But what I really am most excited about is developing some of my own research to explore how consciousness works and how we can utilize that, the conscious hub of all of consciousness. So it's very interesting space. It's opening a lot of opportunity, and I'm very excited and curious naturally to just dive right into all of that.
So I love this because for those of you who have listened to my show or you've listened to my last show, just such an incredibly fascinating topic for me. Alan Watts. I don't know if you know the name Alan Watts. Yeah.
He's my spirit animal.
So I'm a gigantic Alan Watts fan. And I feel like every time you and I have a chat or every time we text or have an interaction, I feel like, now I get it. It's your spirit animal because I feel like I'm talking to Alan Watts, so let's go there. So I want to get into dreams first because some people will say they don't have dreams. Some people will say that they dream a lot. Some vividly, some don't. Let's talk about dreams. So what is a dream?
Okay, so dreams are the language of your subconscious mind. And we know your subconscious mind is constantly on in the background. So at night, this is the time where your subconscious mind comes out to play and do its job. A lot of the times we see just like your day-to-day emotional processing and kind of like all the things that happen in your daytime kind of going and being filed properly into the subconscious mind, and you have to emotionally process it. So we see a lot of that, and that's like a lot of the psychology comes along. But we do also have different areas of dreams. So I always kind of break dreams down into two categories, metaphorical and metaphysical.
Okay.
So, because it can be very spiritual space, and you hear a lot of it in other cultures. We'll talk about it, or in religious content. But when it comes to psychology in Western cultures, we don't always have metaphysical in the DSM-5.
Why do you think that is? So, and I didn't want to interrupt, but I found this fact the other day, extremely fascinating. So we process. I heard it was 11 million gigabytes of data through our brain every second. And only 40%, or actually it was like 40 gig, no, not 40 gig, 40 megabytes actually filter through the eye into the actual brain that we see, that we experience and touch. So 11 million, 40 is all our eyes are consciously able to actually pick up. So subconscious, what you're saying, and I love that you said that it comes out to play, because I don't think about it like it. And I literally just found this out like 2 days ago. I came home from a run and I'm like, oh my gosh, I wrote this down. It was like the craziest.
Yeah, that's a really cool fact. I had not heard that, but I do tell people, I was like, your conscious stream can only pick up a small percentage of what's actually going on around you. And so when
and
you
some of that actually is really, would you say, based on experience? So because I heard another study in the same conversation that I was listening to, there was a scientist who actually took a pair of glasses and he created these kaleidoscopes and prisms and he flipped everything upside down. So he gave them to his participants of the study for 3 weeks. They had to wear the glasses so that everyone that they saw, the entire world, their purview of the world was flipped. So people were walking upside down. Everything was upside down. But the fascinating thing about it was that when they took the glasses off after 3 weeks, they still saw things the exact same way. People were still upside down, gravity, because their neural pathways had created and shifted to the way that. So I guess where I'm going with that is that everything that we see really is.
Well, yeah. So whatever the percentage of that is, and I think when we have like conscious awareness, right, you're connecting those neurons, you're building more strength in like what you would be picking up consciously. But your subconsciousness picks up on everything constantly. And so one thing we were noticing, like when it came to some of the conversations in the space industry, they really want to collect data. And they're like, do we put like wires on people to gather it from their body and their emotions, what's going on internally? And I was like, well, if you look at your dreams, your subconscious mind takes all of that data and it processes it through still. So dreams would be another just a way of being able to access like some of this data coming through if you looked at your brain as a computer, right? So it's constantly on in the background. So there's a lot of potential with the subconscious mind and learning how to like really tapping into it, utilizing it.
So why is it that in the West, we don't really talk about the metaphysical as much as metaphorical? And I really don't even think we talk, and I could be wrong about the metaphorical. Like we talk about dreams, like sometimes you'll hear it in passing, oh my God, I had a funny dream. That's really kind of the extent of it.
Yeah, sadly. It's more like purely entertainment until it starts to really strike an emotional chord, and then it sticks to them and usually will cause like some issues where people be like, it's a nightmare, right? That will tend to get someone's attention. So the metaphysical. So I think with the reason with the metaphoric or the metaphysical is because we don't know how to track that like scientifically or make it fact. And I think in Western culture, we're very logical, very left brain. We want the science and the fact. So I think that's still kind of changing today as we do have a lot of research going on and people are exploring consciousness in that level of like spirituality, out of body experiences. Does your soul actually leave and go explore? And having some separation in that. So I think in today's world, it's more open-minded towards it because we actually have science that can try to back it up. Before, it was never fact, so no one would ever do much with it. But I know when I would go into certain groups with dreams, like say if I went to like African cultures, they don't really respect a lot of psychology from what I've understood. And they're really spiritual. So like if you eat in a dream, they're like, oh, don't ever eat in a dream. That's a demon or a negative entity trying to access you, right? But if I were to say, well, that all depends on the context of the dream.
So we were talking about the metaphysical and the metaphorical. So we were talking about Africa, and this is kind of fascinating for me because there's this symbology part of this, there's the literal interpretation part. And are they aligned? When we think about African cultures, for example, we think about Western, obviously the way that we interpret our experiences has a lot to dreams. I mean, would you say that's accurate?
Yeah. No, it does. A lot of it. And like even like culturally and stuff. That's when like the mass collective even, right, has their themes in societies. All have their own like archetypes. What's popular will show up. So when it comes to like the metaphysical, sorry, I forgot your question originally. What did you ask specifically about that?
So we were talking about how the symbolism and the literal, like we can interpret those differently based on culture. So
yeah. And then also
you were talking about the
individually, too.
African eating something and that being a demon, which in the Western culture, we definitely would not think like that. Like, I think
No, we would
people,
not. We'd be like, well, maybe
yeah,
you're
I think we're
hungry
trying.
or
Are demons even real? Like, so yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting per culture and like how they view it. So like I think when it comes to like dream etiquette a little bit, sometimes you have to be a little more aware of that because like I have definitely made this mistake where I've gone in and like talked about dreams from like a psychological perspective and then people are like don't even, that's not even what it means, and you're like, oh, okay, never mind. So but what I've noticed, like, so the metaphysical and the metaphorical mirror each other. And I think we see that in like psychology and like how when people like go manic or overly depressed or have like some serious imbalances, right? It gets really dark. And then you talk about like having internal aspects of yourself that can appear to be disconnected and negative. And it's same with nightmares if you're being tormented by an aspect of yourself or maybe an emotion. So like when it comes to metaphorical and metaphysical, there is like a fine line in some of that sometimes because it's really hard to know what is actually belongs to that person and what might actually be spiritual or metaphysical, right? Or something external outside of themselves. So like when I've had to do that in the past, I've had to like track, and we do this for like months on end where we'll track certain parts. We usually do like the IFS, which is the internal family systems work. So you can recognize and work within your house first and bring the wholeness. But usually I've noticed that people are having issues with maybe some negative things, or if it's say metaphysical or even going out of body and maybe ending up in like some of the lower realms. That usually mirrors what's going on internally for them. So it's like an energetic match. So like that's something I have noticed in the past. When it comes to like, see, I love psychology a lot. So I don't really normally just jump to the metaphysical stuff. That's like very far and few in between. And so like it's not like it comes across the table every day, but it still exists and is out there. But I think a lot of people will, especially in the spiritual communities, they want to like blame a lot of things on like, oh, it's something negative coming after me, or it's this or it's that, and they don't want to actually mirror the shadow of their own self. So there's a lot that goes on with that, but I really enjoy getting in and like diving into the tracking parts and having the soul interacting with these identities or these parts of yourself, because your soul always will know what belongs to you and what doesn't belong to you. So there's like a really
such
big
it's
lane
such an
that.
interesting investigation too, because it's back to almost Jungian. So we all have our archetypes and shadow work, and then really being able to think like that and to take the psychology aspect into that to be able to actually do the hard work. So
Yeah.
you had said something that I thought was really interesting, and we kind of on our break we're kind of talking about the out of body experience. So let's talk about the out of body experience for a second, because like when you tell Western culture that, it's like you're crazy.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure a lot of people probably still think I am crazy, but it's okay. So that's a popular question. When I tell people I work with dreams, they automatically want to know about out-of-body experiences and lucid dreaming. So with the lucid dreaming, that's just like strong awareness, right? But with out-of-body, there is a lot of awareness most of the time. Sometimes I think people are going out of body and they just don't have the memory of it. But the out of body is like your soul actually leaving. So instead of exploring your internal world, I call your subconscious mind as your house, right? And then when you walk out of your front door, you're out in the world and you come across good things, bad things, everything. It's the whole world of the universe is out there, right? And you're kind of navigating your way through it. That's kind of how it is with out of body experiences too. A lot of people don't. I think at first people don't initiate out-of-body experiences. They tend to have one on accident or out of nowhere, and then it catches their attention and they're like, whoa, that's feels like it wasn't a dream, that felt real. You know, they're out connecting with their guides, or maybe they see angels or talk to God. They're having like these powerful moments. Some of them are being chased around in like hell or something, you know. We get all the good, the bad, and the ugly in it. But the out-of-body is like really valuable. I feel like that is your soul's journey and explorations. When our subconscious mind will go into our house and we're exploring our internal world, that's like a very healing, working with our reality in life right now, right? But when you're working without a body, it kind of goes beyond just this life of existence you have right now. And it's like your wholeness of your soul exploring the stepness of its own mission and existence. So it's very unique, and it's
And
very powerful.
I
There's a lot out
love
there.
the house example. I feel like it's like very, I mean, you get it like immediately.
Yeah.
So, I was thinking about that. I was watching a documentary called Down the Rabbit Hole and Gaia, and these are things that I'm fascinated by this. And it was kind of timely that we're having this conversation because basically, if we were to break down the house, your brain has two hypotheses when it wakes up in the morning. You have the first hypothesis that your feet over the side of the bed and there's going to be a cliff. You're going to fall over the cliff and you're going to die. I mean, that's the one. And unfortunately, we do see that with some people who are panic stricken. They have anxiety. They have the hypothesis in their mind leaning more toward that one. And then you have the other hypothesis that without even thinking, put your feet over the edge of the bed. There's a floor there. There's all this stuff. But your brain is going through these hypotheses every second of the day without you realizing. And I feel like I've heard like the number is between 60 and 70,000 thoughts that you have every day. 95% of those are automatic thoughts that are in your subconscious. You have zero control over those thoughts. 5% of those thoughts are actually conscious thoughts that you're going to say, this is an out-of-body experience. The rest of it is going to happen. Is that correct?
Yeah, it sounds about
crazy?
right. Yeah,
That's a crazy house.
It is a crazy house. It's a very complex. It's one of my favorite metaphors, though, because it also represents how consciousness works, right? Like you have your conscious bubble, and then outside of your bubble, we've got the bigger bubbles of like society or your neighborhood, right? And then you go out and you've got the state or the country or the world or the planet, and then so on. And like Carl Jung, he's got his, I know they're probably like outdated a little bit now, but right, you got your conscious, and he's got the breakdowns of the diagram of how consciousness, and it's just the circles within the circles, and you've got so, and it's true, and that's what I love most about it is knowing that all consciousness exists within consciousness, and we are all connected. Like we're one conscious hub. So when you walk out your front door, but it also shows the importance of protecting your mind and being aware that there's a front door and that things come in and you go out, and it's, so I remember I grew up religious, and they'd always say, like, don't let the devil come in and stuff, like very religious, but I understand it in the sense of how the subconscious mind works, and also like just how consciousness works. And we're like, okay, you think have a private space, but it's not always very private though. So it's interesting in that sense.
Yeah, so I grew up kind of the same background. The devil made me do it and all of the things that go with that. And you're right. Even like looking at like Roblox right now, I was like, my wife sent me a video, Roblox, where it's a game I guess kids are playing. And within Roblox, so there's all of the like things like pedophiles and image swapping and like all this stuff going on. And parents, I guess, wrote to the company who makes Roblox. All they did is put parental control. So instead of leaving it up to them to take the responsibility to get rid of all this stuff, they just said, oh, we'll put some parental controls in it. There's two schools of thought to that. So you either watch what your kids are doing and don't allow them on there or allow them certain things, or leave it up to companies who are going to put profit over it. But I was thinking of that as you're saying that, because you have these things, filters of what you choose to watch or what you choose your energy. There's a book by John Mark Comer called Practice This Way. He talks about spiritual formation because we're all being formed something. We're all being discipled something. One version of something came from somebody else's. So we're all a disciple of. Are you a disciple of violence, mass media, negativity, all that stuff? Kind of the front door, so to speak, and then kind of permeate.
It's true. Yeah. Like I know this last year I've gotten very strict with myself on like building mindset and really changing my perception and stuff. So like controlling what's going on around me in my environment and what I'm hearing, what I'm listening to. Like I've really gotten really guarded on that. And I see the big difference in it. And it's huge. But like I don't think we realize, we know there's garbage around us on a daily basis, right? But I don't think people realize to how much it is actually affecting them. Because again, your subconscious mind is absorbing everything, if you're consciously paying attention to that or not. And same with children too. Like I know for me, working through with my son, again, Roblox, right? And trying to just really, I'm just noticing that I've spent a lot of time guarding my mind, and I also have to go and guard his mind on all this stuff. And it just shows like this world, we're very impressionable in that sense. Our minds are. So again, we're going back to religious scripts and teachings. Yes, guard your mind. It's not necessarily, maybe the devil per se, but it's everything. Your mind is a door. And, if you want to have control of your mind, you should control the door.
So the out of body, we were kind of talking about it on the break, that I had an out of body, and I shared that, I think, in one of my other episodes of my podcast. And again, growing up in a religious background and never having any context stuff, I through my first psychedelic experience, not only did I get to live and revisit my trauma, but I got to heal it, but I also got to have an out of body. So I actually was looking down on my body, and my wife was actually covering my hands and my feet, canopying me. And I shared this in another episode. And I was at a Bible study last night at church, and I was explaining this, and like mouths were dropping. And they were like, this is probably the story I've ever heard. And I'm like, so I'm literally sitting at church, and out of bodies are real. Like they're like completely real. And I think the first exposure I had to it is that when I went to my first psychedelic experience, the psychotherapist came in, kind of came in on a whirlwind. She was like the last one in. She was coming in. She had a friend in Puerto Rico that she was going to hook up with in an alternate unit. And we're all like, yeah, whatever. So the next morning we saw her, and she's like, yeah, I saw my friend. Her friend was a psychotherapist, very experienced in plant medicine and consciousness. And they met, and they were hanging out and talking, and they could tell each other what they were wearing. And I was like, what the heck? So I was in ceremony a month ago, and I told my wife, I know this is completely, because I saw it before. And I said, can you do me a favor? Can you drop in my experience? So I was on 8-gram psilocybin ceremony. And I said, about 12 o'clock, can you just drop in and just say hi and just check in on me? And sure enough, I don't know what time it was, because clearly time and space don't matter. But I start waving, and I'm like, hey, what's going on? And she's like, I'm just here to check on you. I just wanted to say I love you, and I just want to make sure you're okay. And I'm like, everything is so good. Like, it was like the best experience I'd ever had. And I remember writing down in ceremony, check what time it is. And then I started laughing, like, who on earth has a watch around here? Like, no one has any idea what time it is. And then the next day, this girl was asking me as we're getting ready to leave. She's like, who are you waving at? I'm like, this is legit. Like, and my wife had texted me that night, and she's like, so I'm like, I did. Like, I saw you. So I know it's possible.
Oh, yeah. And it's funny. I was just watching this interview, another podcast on this woman who's directed nonverbal autistic kids with telepathy, and how they are able to share images and like see through the eyes of their parents and their loved ones, read their thoughts, right? And I used to practice this a lot with my friends a couple years ago. We would try to practice remote viewing and telepathy from other parts of the country. And we'd sit down and meditate at the same time and then share what we saw. And it usually correlated pretty close. So like I knew a lot of this already is real, but it's like, well, how do we bring it into like research and like showing it and like then developing it? What do you even do with it? Like now what, So that's kind of like where I've come in, where I'm like, okay, now what do we do with it? So like I have experience. Well, I've had a lot of experience. So I've had a lot when I was first really started paying attention to my dreams. It was because I was having out of body experiences. I was having conversations with my higher self, or like my soul. It was like this perfected image of myself. Then my guides were coming in and trying to help me problem solve some stuff, which, these aren't normal internal world dreams. These are like, okay. And then I had this dream where I talked to God once, and he was just like this bright white energy. And he said, seek and you shall find. And you found me. And that was after a whole series of dreaming all night with these messages of birthing his vision or birthing this creation, right? And, I always said I wanted to be a conduit of the message. So, I've had very powerful dreams like that. But some of the more interesting ones that I really enjoy are with my son. He's 6 years old now. But for several years, because with co-sleeping and stuff, he has told me, sometimes we always talk about dreams, so he's very familiar with dreaming. And he told me one morning that he was a ghost last night, and he was flying around the house, and he could see us all sleeping in our beds. And I was like, oh, that's an out of body experience. Okay. And genuine coming out of 4-year-old. I was a ghost last night. I could see you guys sleeping in your bed. One time we had a shared dream experience where I entered into his dream and I was very confused because like 5 a.m, was up with him for a second and we laid back down. It's the twilight hours, which is a really good hot time for out of body experiences because you wake up and then you go back to sleep, right? So you're kind of in between those brain waves a little bit, which is great for lucidity. I knocked over his blocks in the dream. He woke up, he yelled at me in the dream, woke up, smacked me in real life, and yelled at me again for the very thing.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yes, so that was always fun. And then I've had a lot of experiences in the beginning where I just felt like I was floating around my house. Like I remember one time I was reading a book and I was like floating around my bookcase just reading. It was just, it was odd. Then I've had dreams or like moments where I was out of body and I was like lingering on my ceiling in my bedroom. And I saw this like weird, like almost like a praying mantis, but it was huge, like an alien. And it was trying to like come into the bedroom. And I remember closing the window, going back into my body. And then I had sleep paralysis, which was the only time I've ever experienced sleep paralysis, was coming back into my body. And then I remember asking my guide specifically to help me. He said, it'll take a couple seconds and I'll feel a release. And I did, and it was over. But it was just, you have a number of these experiences all over the place, and I'm studying psychology, I'm studying dreams, I'm into Jungian stuff, and I'm trying to understand, I'm going through then it led me into certifications later down the road. But it was just like, my own personal experience was just like, what is this? And I always say dreams question your perception of reality and your understanding of it. And that's what I really love the most, because like where do you draw the line on what is real and what isn't? I think as a society in Western culture, we really try to have control of that definition. And every time we try to control it, after a while, it just explodes on itself again. And you have to like restructure the protocol of what is this? What is reality? How does consciousness work?
Oh my God. I agree so much. And I talk to my kids about this all the time because we do try to control the things that we think are real. And anybody who's ever done a psychedelic experience or gone into meditation or out of bodies, they know that nothing that we think in the way that we think it is real. I mean, if you just look at quantum mechanics or look at the quantum field and you go all the way down, none of it. Like we used to think that there were only a few dimensions. Now we're finding that there's like 11 dimensions beyond just time, space, front, back. So it calls into question. I love that you said it earlier. Some people think it's crazy. I almost think it's crazy just to walk through life accepting what it is, because it's somebody else's version, basically living. So I always tell everyone, question everything.
It's like the allegory of the cave, right?
Thanks for listening to this episode of Neuma, the Crossroad of Science and Enlightenment. We hope you're enjoying the deep dive into psychedelics, neuroplasticity, and the path to transformation. Before we continue, let's discuss recovery. After powerful experiences, your mind deserves more than just rest. It needs real support. That's where Neuma Hydrate comes in. Formulated with GABA, taurine, inositol, magnesium, and more, Neuma Hydrate is designed to help your brain recover faster and support neuroplasticity, giving you the clarity and the energy to fully embrace your journey. Fuel your recovery and elevate your mind with Neuma Hydrate. Check out neuma.health to learn more. Now, enjoy the rest of the episode. So, dreams took you to certain places. So, you're studying, you're getting certified. When we met, we're in Australia. Like, tell me about that. Like, how did that happen?
So, Australia is a good story. So, first off, Australia was never on my bucket list. I never had it on my mind or heart's desire to be like, I want to go to Australia someday, never. I'm like, Australia would be cool, but I never really thought about it. So it wasn't something I was like incubating into my mind. It was something very natural and organic. So I had a dream that I saw God, right? And I would talk to him. And then I kept having, when I write my creative writings, which my book link is like mostly creative writings of self-reflecting, and some of these bigger questions. And when I would start writing, I would picture this space I was existing in and interacting with. So it was like meditating and then writing at the same time. It was a weird, right? Being in that zone. And I would write about talking to God on the edge of time and space. And I would talk about the way it looked and how peaceful it was and the way it made me feel. And at first I was like, okay, well, I'm, talking to God. But I was also having dreams with my masculine side. And I was going through a lot in my life at the time. So like, I really was like trying to figure out what is this anima and the animus that Carl Jung talks about, your feminine and masculine and how it shows up in your life and all that. So I was having dreams with my masculine side. And then I was writing about this location and I was dreaming about the location on and off for about 2 years. And I thought it was just like my imagination or a happy place, right? That I had created. And then when I went to Australia, I saw the property for the first time. And it just like shook me because I realized the view looking out with all the hills and the rainforest. I was like, this is where I've been hanging out, like in my imagination, in my creative writings, in my dreams, in my meditations. I was like, it was just the weirdest thing. But it was also not just seeing the place that led me there. It was how this interaction between my sleep and my daytime was interacting. So I talk to God in the universe and I'm always interacting with my guides, kind of collaborating my life with them. So like I went through this point in my life where everything was kind of like exploding on itself and there was this huge change coming about. So like I didn't really know where to go or what to do. And the way the opportunity presented itself was like, you have no other choice but to go to Australia. Like God took everything off the table. I was having dreams where my soul was talking to my ego and trying to explain how to live through beauty and how to view beauty, how to view love and love of myself. So it was like a lot of healing. So like there were just so many pieces that were coming about, and I feel like I'm not describing it the best right now.
No, you are. It's like it's
yeah,
incredible.
it was just everything coming in a line and bringing this focal point of this is when you're going to Australia and it's happening. And the way it led, and then when I got to Australia, the dreams picked up even more to where I actually came across in a dream, a shamanic indigenous culture looking character came into my dream. And I could see him, but no one else could see him in the dream. And I was with my partner and there were like some random dream characters hanging out in the dream, right? And I could see him, but no one else could. And I tried to show it to my partner at the time. And I was like, and I looked down and the guy showed me the lake and down below the lake, there was a truck under the water that I could see it, but no one else could see it. I remember trying to point it to my partner and be like, can you see the truck down in your lake down there? And no one could see it. And he's like, it's not there. And then the indigenous figure like walked to the tree line and he tried to get me to follow him to the trees. And he didn't speak or say anything. It was just motion and like this understanding. And I thought about this dream for a while afterwards because I was like, okay, I know when you go to certain locations that are spiritual, specifically, they can have these dream-tied messages to the land. So you always have stories of people going to locations and experiencing something from the land. So I felt like this dream character was kind of part of the land because I was staying in this location called Dreamtime. That's actually what the indigenous culture called the town back. Like, so it was interesting that I was staying in Dreamtime in Australia and I was dreaming of Dreamtime. And then this figure came out and when he was inviting me to go deeper into my spiritual journey and this connection. And I realized where I was at next with my journey was like I was kind of going through the chakra systems with how consciousness would evolve, right? And this awareness of myself. And I realized I was kind of going to where I was learning how to connect to the wisdom of nature, not just through observation, but like meditating and connecting to it spiritually, right? And so like I was doing a lot of that there. So I felt the land really had called me in because I was supposed to find my peace. There was opportunity there in Australia. At one point, my subconscious mind held up 2 visas in a dream, and it was like, you can get a personal visa or you can get a business visa. And it was like, pick one. And it was trying to get me to interact with my intention of being there and being just very aware of what was going on. So like the dreams really were a heavy piece with Australia. And it was so it's just, and there's so much more to it than that.
That's so incredible. I know I've had some meditations. I had a DMT journey, the reclamation back to the and connected to the divine feminine. So I actually went all the way back to I'm half Hispanic, so I saw like the whole female lineage that were powerful,
Yeah,
incredibly. But be able to actually take the intention behind that into powerful. That's incredible.
yeah, no, it is. And that's why I was like, it's more than just acknowledging your dreams. How are you going to live with your dreams and integrate them? And that's like the biggest one. My dreams, I'm divorced. My dreams have been through the nitty-gritty with me, encouraging my self-value, showing me the hard truths, what is authentic, what is inauthentic, where am I sacrificing too much. It's transitioned through the hard stuff. It's helped empower the good stuff. It's helped literally design my business, like my program I'm using right now, what I call the trifecta of creative genius, which would be your soul, your subconscious mind, and your conscious mind. That kind of came from being in those spaces because I was constantly interacting with myself on a psychoanalysis way, right? Where I'm constantly mirroring and talking and dialoguing with myself. So that it just kind of evolved where like seeing the value of these different parts of myself and how do I bring that in and then turn into a modality and a work and all this stuff. And it's just, so it's like it never ends. And I know it's not going to, it's just going to keep going. So I'm excited to see.
So let's talk about that. So
process.
Well, and let's talk about that because you have now, and you kind of alluded to it earlier, working with NASA and with space and engineers. And like, so one, how did that happen? Two, like, what does that look like? I know they're very data centric, as you were saying, but like, walk me through like how that all came, how it's all working now.
So I'm still fairly new. It's only been a few months, so I'm still building a lot. But I spent a good couple months on LinkedIn, and I was like, who do I want to work with, and who would be ideal, blah blah blah. And I always had this curiosity for space. So honestly, they just started showing up in recommendations on LinkedIn, and I just started adding them and connecting and chatting and talking and not selling, just learning and genuine, right? I actually tried to go back to university back when I was pregnant with my firstborn a couple years ago, and I wanted to get into astrophysics, but COVID was started. It was before COVID, but they weren't offering online classes for some of the math classes I needed, right? So I had to be in person. I had to travel too far. So the opportunity didn't work out. So then I went in for inner space and psychology because I liked them both. So there was always a curiosity for space and stars, astronomy, and all that. So it's interesting how it did kind of go full circle where I developed a new skill and then I'm bringing something totally different to the plate, to the same industry I wanted to be in, but with a different role. So mostly I just started interacting and connecting with them. I was watching documentaries, actually, a lot of them, and I was studying what they were talking about with their stress, their struggles with innovation. Like I was taking notes. I wasn't just pure entertainment. Like I was like, what's going on? And then I was talking to them and I was hearing them. So then I just acknowledged that like I do have a spot that I can fit and help with this space. And honestly, one day I was scrolling through, I saw someone post in Brazil who has got the habitat missions down there, talking about innovative psychology. They were trying to work with dreams. So I got on a call with him. We talked for about an hour and then we messaged like a whole couple days after that. They were already trying to explore their dreams. They were struggling a lot with it. So they didn't have anyone that could come in. So had the expertise. So that aligned perfectly. And then seeing what they really wanted to do with it. So like what is innovative psychology? I was a little curious because like for me, I'm like, ooh, like, telepathy, remote viewing. Like what does this entail? It entails all of it. So I was like, oh, this is perfect. And I have a calling for it because about a year ago or a year and a half ago, series of dreams, it's probably more like 2 years. I have a really bad sense of time, to be honest.
It's not real. Time's not real anyway, so.
Yeah, I was like, so about 2 years ago, I was having a lot of dreams with my guides, right? And I was going through a lot. I had this dream twice. I had this experience where I was out of body and I was standing in front of like this council. It looked like a jury room almost, like, and it reminded me of when you talk about in the Bible, when you die, you get evaluated, right? And that's exactly what it felt like. And it was like these beings and they were just like glowing white in their energy. And my guide was there with me and I was there and I was like standing in front of them. And they were telling me that, they were talking to me about some of the stuff I was struggling with in my daytime and how they wanted to support me and they didn't want to see me fail because I was here for a reason. And they know that and they wanted to see me follow through. Twice I've been in this conversation. It was the weirdest thing. But then I had this, so I started ignoring my guides after a while because they were trying to get me to take action and I was too nervous. So I ignored it for a while. And then while I was ignoring it, they went to one of my friends who I talked to academically, but not about my personal life. And she had this dream 2 nights in a row where my guide showed up with my grandmother, and I showed her a picture. And I was like, is this the woman you saw? She's like, yeah. And I was like, oh, not surprising. I was like, they said that I had 2 years to get on the timeline, and I had to take action now, and that they were worried about me. And they told my friend that she had to give me that message, and she said, that's really weird. No. And he goes, if you're not going to tell her the message, we're going to keep showing up. And so on the second day, she gave me the message, and that was just like huge aha. Then I was going through some shamanic healing sessions with one of my good friends, a little, like maybe a couple months later. And there was this message that kept coming through that I was supposed to develop something really unique. And that I had to trust my internal wisdom and stop worrying so much about the books, because I was validating everything through external work, and I wasn't going internal for what I was supposed to be doing. All I know is I'm supposed to take everything that I'm learning right now, and it's going to melt together into something really unique, and I'm supposed to be giving it and serving it. So that it is like a soul mission at that point. And it took a long time for me to, okay, go soul mission, but what is that? So then it started developing about 1.5 years ago. Was having dreams where my guides were showing up, and they were putting their hands on my eyes while I was sleeping. And I was like a lucid aware. And they kept telling me that I had to learn how to view through my third eye. And that was really important for me to figure out how to do it. And it probably took like 3 months. And it wasn't every night, but it was probably like once or twice a week. Like it was consistent enough. And like I could hear them talking, but I couldn't see anything. And then after a while, I noticed that I was sleeping. Eyes were closed, and I was staring at my room. And it kept happening over and over again. And I was lucidly aware. There was no images or dreams. It was just me staring and like thinking, my eyes are closed right now and I can see my room. This is weird. And I was at the point where I got a clock that I could track because I already know what my room looks like. So I was like, wake up, I want to see, did I get time, right? For reference. But then later on, after a while of some breaks, I wasn't doing a good job at being a student and bringing this in the daytime practicing, but I was just letting it be on the back burner. But then after a while, I was having dreams with them again, and they were showing me how to remote view. And what they were doing is they were showing these bubbles everywhere, and they're beautiful. And I looked inside the bubbles, and I could see all of these different scenes in each one. And there was like places of nature. And I could choose which one I wanted to step into, and I could step into the bubble and be in the experience. And that kept happening over and over again. And then it was starting to happen like randomly in meditations where I wasn't really trying to do it, but it just automatically happened. So I feel like they're teaching me, and I know some of you probably think I'm crazy if you're listening, and that's okay. But it's such an insane experience teaching me how to do these things in my dreams. And I believe I'm supposed to be teaching it in the daytime. So I just recently started creating some YouTube content. It's nothing too intense right now, just starting with the basics of learning how to perceive different perceptions, kind of using your imagination and developing some of these muscles, but then taking it to a level where, we're going to try telepathy. We want to try remote viewing. We already know from a lot of research that these things are real. We just can't explain necessarily why. I think science is still trying to back a lot of that up. So I do feel a soul calling a little bit to pioneer some of this stuff. And I think ultimately what it is how does consciousness actually work? All the rules we create for it don't apply.
And again, I feel like we live most of our life based on someone else's, and we don't even know why. We don't even know. And I use the analogy all the time. And I don't know if you ever listened to Neil Donald Walsh conversation. I mean, anyone who's listened to those, the whole idea of right and wrong, bad, come from someone else's version of right and wrong and good and bad. So you always have to question what's crazy, what's not crazy, what's right, what's wrong, what's good, what's bad, because you'd always look at it from another lens to really kind of that's true. So, and if you go back in history long enough, like what is good, it was bad at one point, and what's bad, it was good. So it's kind of an interesting thing. It's so fascinating work that you're doing. And I love that you have this genuine, how do I say it? I have a thing on LinkedIn. So I have been very active on LinkedIn for a couple of years. I call it the 10 So I get 10 messages a day. I think I posted about this a couple weeks ago. It's the 10 and 2. I get 10, no idea who I am, no idea what I'm about. And they're going to pitch me. Like that has ever worked in any kind of business ever.
Oh, sucks.
And then you get the two like genuine relationships who are truly like, dude, I love the work. I love what you're doing. Can I learn about that? And it just feels so genuine that you literally were taking the time to meet people in the same industry that you wanted to be in. And I feel like that's a great lesson there to try to figure out who you want to serve, not pitch, not to sell to. Because I've watched this like incredible transition 6 months that I've known you, how business has gone like completely full circle for you. And I see your post like just so just can see that you care and you're not trying to sell anyone, literally trying to help. So
yeah. Well, and I think that's honestly, that's living in a creative mindset, right?
yeah.
And I've realized, so I used to do wholesaling in my early 20s. I'm 35 now, right? So it was like introvert, very quiet, little Christian girl, right? And getting into sales is aggressive. I am not a salesperson. I remember when I was first started out, it was so uncomfortable. And I remember one client was always penny pinching me and harassing me over the invoicing and every little detail, right? And micromanaging it. And I remember asking him once, why do you even work with me? Because he was kind of pissing me off a little bit at that point. I was like, why are you even working with me? And he goes, I trust you. He goes, I know you're about for my better interest and I just genuinely trust you. And I realized that I've always had that character trait. And I don't think I realized how important that was. Because when you're in business, you're thinking you have to be a certain way. I realized being my own authentic self has been the most rewarding, even just in business in that sense too, you know? So thank you.
And
Yeah,
I think
I love meeting people.
desperately lacking today. I mean, it really is. It's so much self-serving. And I kind of experienced the same thing because I walked away from a company that I built and that I was 30 years. And I had my awakening. I wanted to gravitate to people that were like, that had the same interest. So I found myself like right in the middle of the psychedelic assisted therapy space. I had gone and done some certificate in clinical work, and it was like really amazing, but I didn't want to sell it. I just wanted to be part of the. I feel like that's what people really want. And you said it really earlier on, we're all connected. And I feel like I was talking to somebody yesterday about going on an experience and things sideways. And I said, dog. And yeah, I'm like, dogs, mammals, we all co-regulate. Like we all have this natural connected. Then really take it outside of that and you let yourself go. We're all connected to every living thing. So, and I've had like just incredible meditations outside of my backyard where I'm connected. Like you feel if you allow yourself. And I feel like that's for most of us.
No, it's true. I'm a very visual person and very metaphorical with my way I visualize. I like to visualize everything I understand to be a part of the universe as one body. And we are just tiny little cells existing, making up the body that we all own and share together. And I do believe that. And if you think about it, I can consciously interact with the cells in my body. And in that sense, then if God was the main body, then he can interact with every single one of us and improve the structure of his own body through us.
So you're doing a lot of coaching now. From the last time we talked, I see a lot of interesting things you're doing. So are you bringing on people? I love the meditations on YouTube, by the way. Awesome. But are you working with others? Are you having people come to you, coach? Is that something that you're doing right now? How is that working?
Yeah. So right now, I really would like to work with more engineers and analog astronauts in the space industry. So I'm kind of saving my one-on-one coaching space for that because I do really want to kind of build some research off of it too. So I'm kind of like,
love that.
Yeah, no, definitely. And so right now it's a lot of one-on-one coaching, and a lot of my services are kind of directed very niche towards the space industry at the moment. I do later on want to branch it out and go big again, but I felt like when I first started doing this business, I was so broad, I wasn't getting a lot. And then as soon as I niched up and got direct, it took off. So I do want to open it back up later because like I wanted to work with entrepreneurs for a while, but they weren't really seeing it wasn't on the radar of a need to improve. So it was kind of a difficult one. I was in spiritual communities for a while, wasn't quite working out that well either. They didn't want to spend money. So it took a while, but yeah, like it's, sorry, I'm trying to think of like the original question. I got distracted.
Oh, well, how are you working with? Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. One-on-one right now and with the group coaching, which is still with the industry specific, but anyone who's interested in listening to this, I have been updating my YouTube channel with a lot of fresh techniques that are free. You can just go on there and practice on your own time. So I kind of have set up my YouTube channel to be for like open to the public at the moment and for people who are interested and really just want to try. I do have the remote viewing meditation that I posted earlier today with the bubbles, kind of recreating that technique for my guides for anyone interested.
Definitely. So, and I think the day that you posted, that they were 7. So, and you posted the first one, and I did it, and I was like, and I commented right away. I'm like, do this. So, so listeners, definitely, I'll post a link in the podcast episode, and again on the channel, be able to go and find Chelsey meditate. Work this.
Yeah, great incredible practice for curious minds.
Thank you. Dreams are something that I think we credit. I think in our Western philosophy, they, for me, just personally, more open my dreams. I think you said it in the very beginning just so eloquently. It's brain's way to play. And if we were just to accept that and to be able to take that and be able to extract the lesson from that, our soul is always tell us. And thank you. For me personally, this was something that I really did today. But I'm sure this is something that a lot of people are going to, and I feel like we're just getting of having you back for a lot more.
Yes, I would love to, because there's so much more, and I didn't want to. It's hard to bring it all in one conversation sometimes, but it's a rabbit hole.
So we will definitely bring this. We will definitely bring this back, and it's just been so cool to watch, like the transition of you in just 6 months that we've connected on Facebook on a random CEO, and I love that. And I love that you said it. You were so nice about it too. I'm fascinated how many CEOs or entrepreneurs don't really want to better themselves. They think they have all the answers. This is my first rodeo with a company. The greatest thing that we can do is admit that we don't have all the answers and that there is always somebody a few steps ahead of us who really back and bring us. So that was very nicely said.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is about entrepreneurs, but eventually you got to leave them at the door.
I don't miss it. I'm probably come back someday to entrepreneurs because I love entrepreneurship, but I did get a little exhausted and burnt out in that space. But I've watched some powerful things. I've watched people go from corporate to committing to running their business. One woman, she dreamt, her dreams encouraged her, supported her. They even showed her a vision of what she wanted to build and what it would make her feel in experiencing it before she ever did it as a brick and mortar location. And so that enough was able to inspire. So, I helped one. I helped a couple entrepreneurs, but it was powerful for her. And she was just like, wow. And I'm like, yes, how do I market that?
I think just having her testimony. So that would, yeah. Wow. No, you're right. Because I think what you're doing is planting seeds. And I think that you'll come full circle and you're ready to harvest.
Yeah, I'm very excited. And we are on the floor running, so we're going.
Thank you again for your time today. I guess I will post in the link how to find Chelsey, how to find her channel. And again, somebody that I have a lot of mad respect for and look forward to having back on the show again to really get more in particular topics and dreams because I have a lot of questions.
Yes, I'm excited. We can definitely dive in more. So thank you.
Thank you. This is Alan Wiederhold.